Hello and welcome to the webinar. Thank you very much for joining me. As you can see below, there is a chat box where you can ask questions. Please don't ask them just yet. I'll tell you when we're taking questions. It'll be in about 45 minutes time. We'll start taking questions. And at that point, if you do want to ask a question, make it one sentence. And at the end of that sentence, you need to place a question mark. And Richard will be reading the questions out for me, and I'll answer them for you as best as I possibly can. So I'm going to show you how I use neurolinguistic programming and hypnosis, particularly when I'm working with clients, when I'm helping people, and my predominant focus at the moment is on healing CPTSD. This isn't the formal, proper way of doing NLP. This isn't the formal, proper way of doing hypnosis. It's based on stuff that I was taught by Richard Bandler and books I've read, and the Ericksonian method, the Milton Erickson method, for those of you who are interested in that. But it's my own thing. So if I say things that is like, you go, hey, it says it differently in this NLP book, I was like, well, sorry about that. I do stuff that works. I've been doing this since I was 18. So I've had a lot of practice and a lot of time to develop these different skill sets. And I've spent a lot of time using it with clients. So this is a very human-focused methodology. It's not very complicated. It's very, very simple in its essence. So I'm going to show you the essential principles of it first. So if you could cut to that how to hypnosis slide. So this is just to let you know that this is my methodology. It's my own weird way of doing things, based on experience, based on a way that I've developed of doing things over time, not necessarily the proper formal way of getting it done, but definitely a functional way of getting that job done. Okay, so here's the 2-minute version of how we do this. It is nothing more when you're hypnotizing somebody, and the same principle applies for self-hypnosis. I'm going to teach you self-hypnosis in about 35 minutes time. So in 35 minutes time, I'll get to the self-hypnosis part, but I need you to understand how hypnosis in general works. And this is how NLP in general works, because neurolinguistic programming is actually hypnosis in practice. If you take hypnosis out of NLP, NLP falls apart. It's right there baked into the cake. It's right there in the foundation. Now, I'm not going to spend a ton of time changing your beliefs about NLP and hypnosis. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time answering questions from people who are shocked at what I'm going to tell you about NLP and hypnosis. If you've never made it work and you've struggled to make it work, if you struggle to make self-hypnosis work, or you've tried to use hypnosis with clients and it didn't work, more than likely the problem is your beliefs about what it is and how it functions are simply wrong. They're simply incorrect. We don't have time for me to try and sell you on that. I'm just going to make statements about how this actually works, and that will be that. The 2-minute version of what hypnosis is, used in terms of function, in terms of using it, don't worry about trance inductions. If you've ever bought a book that teaches you how to hypnotize and it's got 80% of it is trance induction, you were ripped off, very simply. You don't need all that time spent on trance inductions. It's just not that important. All you need to do is to get the client or person you're using the hypnosis on, or if it's self-hypnosis yourself, to relax. So trance induction was only ever a way of getting people to relax and pay attention. Why is this so powerful? Well, the power of this is that you don't do it. It's not a thing that you would do normally. One of the most very fiercely intelligent guy that I've ever met, who was very, very confrontational, especially when it came to hypnosis, said to me, well, I don't see how this can work. And I'm like, the problem is that you're overthinking it. It's actually incredibly simple. It's not what you think it is. You just sit still and you think about one thing nonstop for 30 seconds to a minute or longer with no breaks in it. And that's it. So all I need you to do when you're inducing the so-called trance in people is just get them to relax and to pay gentle attention with singular focus on one thing. There's nothing more to it than that. You don't need a 15-minute long trance induction. If any of you watching this now, if you look above the device, the television, the computer, the Mac, whatever you're watching this on, at the wall behind the device that you can see, and then look up to the ceiling, where the wall meets the ceiling, and gently let your eyes defocus in the same way that they defocus when you wake up first thing in the morning and you're still really, really tired and you're kind of staring around the room and you're a little bit blurry-eyed. Can you do that now? Do it now. Take a deep breath in through your nose, let that breath out and go, oh, and let your eyes pleasantly defocus. You are now as relaxed as you will ever need to be in order for hypnotic suggestions to go in and for them to work. Nothing more to it than that. Some of you are at this point be going, no, it's not. Hypnosis is I have no idea what's going on and I have no control over myself and I have no awareness. As I said to you in the beginning, I'm not going to spend a lot of time breaking down people's beliefs about what they think hypnosis is or what they've seen in films. A lot of that stuff is theater, and the purpose of that theater is because it makes it interesting to watch. It's like the ideas people have about martial arts that they get about films differ somewhat from martial arts application in real life, because when we're telling a story as storytellers, as filmmakers, as film directors, you're going to show the most theatrical version of the event. So showing people with swinging watches going, ooh, and the other person being totally out of control themselves is much more interesting than the idea that you're basically gently guiding their consciousness in a certain direction. So the second part of my 2-minute hypnosis lesson is just to tell them what to do. Could you cut to that slide again, Richard? Cheers, mate. So there's only 2 things. You get them to relax, you get them to pay attention, and then you tell them what to focus on. You tell them what to think. You tell them what to feel. You tell them how to change, how to adapt, how to heal, how to become stronger, more confident, or whatever it is. Cut back to me, sir. Thank you. Now, the way in which that works is extremely important. So my 2-minute version, the 2-step idea of what hypnosis is, relax and tell. Sounds very simple, and it is simple in principle. Like if you literally take a person who needs to feel more confident and you get them to relax and you say to them, start feeling more confident now, they will. If we took over the government and we started having government branded adverts that ran on TV alongside normal adverts that said, hey, remember to be cheerful and optimistic today. As lame as that sounds and as unlikely as it sounds, by the 20th, 30th and 50th time that you've seen that and heard that, people would start cheering up because ideas go in like that and we just have a tendency to obey. So get them to relax and then tell them. When does it get a little bit more complicated? If you cut back to the PowerPoint, please, mate. It gets more complicated when we start to look at how to tell. So if you're going to relax, get somebody relaxed, tell them to think and feel and act a certain way, you need to understand the language of the unconscious. Don't get weird on me. Don't get all freaky deaky and woo woo because I said the word unconscious. We're using the word unconscious the way that Jung would use it or the way that Freud would use it. It's that which is not conscious, but that which is still operating. When you walk, when you eat, when you drive your car, when you're in a conversation, it is the non-conscious, the unconscious that is allowing you to operate and do that. Because if you had to think about that all the time, you'd never get anything done. So when we're talking to the unconscious, we need to use different methods to get the unconscious to listen that bypasses the ego, that bypasses the critical faculties, and that tells the suggestions that we're trying to get through to go away. So how are we going to do that? The way we're going to do it is there's 4 different methods. So the most traditional and the thing that you've seen in movies and the thing that you've seen in books and, I don't know, depicted since Arthur Conan Doyle times would be the direct authoritarian approach. The direct authoritarian approach is probably the most theatrical, is probably the most, is the one that everybody thinks of, is the one that you've seen in films, most likely. And it works in certain circumstances and has worked with relative degrees of success depending on what the culture is and what the history is. Usually this is going to work if the person delivering it has a degree of authority in the eyes of the person who's receiving it. So that's why back in the day, you would have like the great, think of a weird word, Richard. What's the first word that comes into your mind?
Spanner.
Spanner, he said. Spanner you. I am the great Spannerio. I am come from foreign country with strange accent, and I make with costume and beard and funny face. And I come and I go, look, the great Spannerio has seen into your soul. He knows your secrets. Then you're going to be like, ooh, that's nice. I was just expecting a pleasant night out at the theatre, and now my soul has been seen by the great Spannerio. And as you go into this sort of ritualistic state, and it's a pattern interrupt, basically, you're outside of your normal state of consciousness, the great Spannerio now has authority to say to you, now, as you look into my eyes, you will drop into a trance, Sylvania. For some reason, I've gone in with that accent. You'll drop down into trance. You will be completely unconscious and have no control whatsoever over blah, 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 blah. Well, you know, that would work in times where people had less critical faculty, where they were used to obeying authority figures, where if somebody came out in a spangly cape and with, you know, a weird look and a funny accent and a strange, intense stare of the eye, and they seemed exotic and all-powerful, that people would submit to that authority. Nowadays, people have seen a bit more, they're aware of a bit more, and they're more likely to tell the great Spannerio to fuck off, which is where the critical faculty steps back in, the ego steps back in, the defenses pop back up, and you go away. So direct and authoritarian can still work. I actually saw, I did a refresher seminar just over a year ago with Richard Bandler, and he switches between this, and he will do the direct and authoritarian approach, where he'll get somebody on stage in front of a room full of people, and because he has that authority and that name, he can say, now you listen to me here, you know, the Richard Bandler thing, now, and people go, oh, and they completely trance out. That will work when there is a power dynamic that is not horizontal but vertical, where somebody you feel at least had some kind of power of charisma over you. That will work. For CPTSD, it's not great. For clients who have experienced trauma, especially childhood trauma, a parental authoritarian figure telling them what to think and feel can be just a little bit triggering. So it's not ideal. You can use it if you're a coach or a counselor or a therapist watching this, you can use it to a degree, but it's not my preferred approach with people who have CPTSD or people who have been diagnosed or even misdiagnosed with borderline personality disorder. Definitely don't use that approach, and definitely don't get them to sit with their eyes closed whilst you say things to them and tell them what to feel. It's way too triggering. So you don't need to do that. And if I was working with somebody, I would say that right up front. This is the old way of doing it. This is the way you think it should be done, but actually that's super out of date. And I don't think anybody really does that anymore, apart from stage hypnotists. They still will use that kind of approach, and they select people who are suggestible and open to that approach before they even begin. But the second methodology is, as you could see on this list here, which Richard will cut to now, pow, is the indirect and suggestive method. So this is the more modern method, and this is where the work of Milton Erickson kicked in, and this is what you would more typically see with neurolinguistic programming, where once you've built rapport with somebody, you're going to indirectly suggest that they do certain things. And this is what I prefer to do with people because it's a little bit more fun. It's a bit more challenging for me to do it that way, because you have to find ways of putting it in. Some people call it covert hypnosis. Some people call it conversational hypnosis. All it is when you communicate, you put ideas inside of people's heads. This is a standard thing that everybody does. If I ask you to think about a blue circle, you probably can. If I ask you to imagine what color your front door is, you probably just did it. If I ask you to imagine a blue circle drawn on the back of your left hand and your left hand opening your front door, apart from getting stressed out that you can't remember which hand is left and which hand is right, you can probably do that. These are just thoughts. These are just feelings. These are things that are running inside of your head at any moment in time. So the indirect and suggestive method is to get the person to relax, build some rapport with them, and then either whilst they're in a so-called trance state, so you can actually have people eyes closed, or you can have them eyes open if they feel more comfortable and just staring at a bit of the wall, or they can just be looking at you in normal conversation, and you can indirectly suggest. So the direct and authoritarian method for what's a desirable state, Richard? What would you like to feel more of every day? How would you like to feel?
more relaxed.
More relaxed. So if you're a tense, agitated, and anxious person, you want to feel relaxed, you could say, now go into a trance. As you are going around your daily business on a day-to-day basis, from the moment you wake up to the moment you go back to bed at night, think now how good it would feel if you were more relaxed. And that's more direct or authoritarian. The indirect or suggestive would be, hey, wouldn't it be cool if just for a moment, a person, maybe you, could imagine what it might be like if maybe, as they were going about their daily business, what they started to do was to just slow down in their mind, in their emotions, in their physiology, and just deliberately kind of relax down a little bit and start to feel more relaxed throughout the day. Wouldn't that be cool? So you see the difference between the two methods. One is direct and authoritarian. You will do it this way. The other one is, hey, maybe this is a suggestion. It's indirect. It makes the person less defensive. It means that the ego is less likely to pop up and the ego defenses are less likely to kick that message back. And that suggestion, that indirect method, is really the very essence of the power of hypnosis and why people push hypnosis to one side. So most people push hypnosis to one side because they think maybe the people who push it away and don't want to deal with it, 70% of them do it because they have a bad view of what hypnosis is. They're like, it's about control. It's about mind control. You lose your sense of reality. You lose your memory, all of which is total bullshit. Doesn't happen. It's very, very hard to make people lose memory. It's very, very hard to get people to lose control and to get stuff that is against their moral principles. They've done numerous tests on this, and I think it's safe to say in a clinical setting that it's actually impossible. They've tried it numerous times. It can't be done. So that's why most people don't use it. The other 30% who don't use it, pick it up, try it, it works, and they go, that's too fucking easy. It can't be that simple. There's no way that it can be that simple. What you tell somebody to relax, you indirectly suggest that they're going to feel more relaxed and less anxious on a daily basis, and then they do. There's no way. There must be some fancy psychotherapeutic thing or some ritual that I need to go through or some pain and some crying I need to go to feel better. And it really is just as simple as that. Okay, so there is another method of speaking to the unconscious that's very, very important to understand. So if you cut to the list again, that's awesome. And that is to help you to understand the actual language of the unconscious more deeply. The unconscious doesn't process content very well, but it does process context and meaning very well. That is the unconscious's primary objective. It is the conscious mind's primary objective to focus on content. The unconscious's primary objective is to focus on context and to develop meaning from context. So that is why we dream in symbols. That is why we dream in metaphors. Every dream you've ever had is a symbol or a metaphor for a different part of yourself. Whatever that dream is, it's about you, but at a metaphorical level. What are the implications of that for hypnosis? The implications of that for hypnosis are that, and this is the Erickson method, or what Milton Erickson, well, all of this is the Erickson method, but what Milton Erickson got famous for was to not speak directly about the person or their problems. He would put them into a light state of trance and tell them a story. Now, every story is a metaphor. If you've been following me on Spartan Life Coach YouTube, you're listening to stories. That's what I do, is I tell stories. Why? Switches off the critical faculties, allows me to deliver post-hypnotic suggestions, allows me to have people feel entertained and amused whilst I'm speaking to them. And all that time, I can put all the suggestions in that I want to do. How would you use metaphor? If I've got a group of people who feel very, very anxious and they feel hopeless, they feel like they're facing a problem that is bigger than them, that is greater than them, that they've tried their entire lives to conquer and it has always beaten them back. Maybe I'd tell them a story about the 300, the Spartans, the Battle of Thermopylae, facing insurmountable odds. And through discipline and through focus and through experience and through learning generation by generation how to do warfare with the enemy, they managed to, it wasn't really 300, the historians amongst us know, it was 300 Spartans and then a couple of thousand Thracians, and Thespians were there as well. So it's actually 3,000, but 3,000 soldiers faced off against, we don't know what the numbers are, certainly more than 20,000 soldiers, and survived. for a period of time. Should be impossible, but their strategy was such that they prevailed. That's a little story. What's the metaphor for the story? Well, the unconscious starts to pick up the metaphor. Resistance, the will to fight, the will to conquer, and skill through discipline and application over time. The unconscious likes that. If I just say to you, go and be disciplined, and when you're faced with a problem that frightens you, be brave, you won't remember it. But if I tell you the story of the 300, then that allows your unconscious to hook onto that and go, oh, okay, this is why Aesop told fables. This is why throughout human history, at nighttime, instead of sitting around the TV, we'd sit around the fire and the elders would tell stories. People would tell stories of things that they had done or things that they had seen. And the primary purpose was to convey wisdom, was to convey teachings, was to convey learnings. So when you are a therapist and you're doing work with the unconscious, and if you're not working with the unconscious, you may as well just hang your hat up and give up tomorrow. That you can't expect the client's conscious mind to hold on to what you're saying. It's really unfair to do that. It's like, you know, it's some horrible evil kung fu master torture. You know, hold these two bowls of water, go into a horse stance, and by the way, I'm going to kick you in the groin multiple times. The conscious mind can't cope. You've got to hand that stuff over to the unconscious. You should only, as a therapist or a coach or a hypnotherapist, be seeking to work with the client's unconscious beliefs and their unconscious map of reality. This is how the deep work is done in a way that is fast and lasting, and you will get a good reputation for delivering healing and delivering good results rapidly if you only focus on working with the unconscious. So use metaphor. When you're doing trance work with people, absolutely you should be using metaphor. There's all kinds of metaphors. Take your favorite story that you've ever heard, your favorite fable as a child. It is a metaphor for something else. The fourth method that you need to understand for addressing the unconscious directly is first person and second person subjective experiencing. Okay, a lot of long words there. Let's make this really simple. If I wanted Richard to feel more relaxed, I can tell him literally with the content of my words, it's time for you to feel relaxed now. Start to feel relaxed. Or I can have him close his eyes and I can have him vividly visualize what it would be like to go through all his experiences throughout the day that usually makes him feel agitated and stressed. And suddenly he just finds himself feeling relaxed. He sees what he would see and he feels relaxed. He hears what he would hear and he just feels like he has all the time in the world and it makes him feel really relaxed. He feels what he would normally feel during a time during the day that would make him feel agitated, and suddenly he gets this overwhelming sense of confidence and control and the feeling that he is relaxed now. And even though he's working and not really listening to me right now, this will still work, and tomorrow he's going to tell me he felt more relaxed.
I feel more relaxed tomorrow.
That's called timeline therapy. He just went straight into his future and came back and told us what his state was in the future. So you can do this directly or you can do it indirectly, depending on the state of your client. Speaking to the coaches again now, I like to use a CPTSD scale. So if I think the client, say it's like 1 to 10, 0 is, you know, barely any CPTSD, a few emotional flashbacks, a few issues with intimacy, but they function, they can go to work, they can enjoy their life, they can have a good time, and there's no problem, except at certain times that are very, very triggering for them. I would rate that like a 0 to 4. From a 5 to 7, the emotional flashbacks are more intense, they're more regular, and they're actually damaging intimate relationships. From a 7 to 10, the emotional flashbacks are so strong and so frequent that the person actually struggles to hold down a job. And by the time you're up to 9 and 10, they can barely leave the house because everything triggers them. They're like a raw nerve and everything is triggering them all the time. So rate them on that CPTSD scale. If they're at 0 to 5, you can use direct subjective experiencing. So you can say, hey, shut your eyes, relax. The client wants to feel more relaxed. They want to feel more optimistic and cheerful and upbeat and full of energy. And you have them visualize, have them see what they would see, hear what they would hear, and feel what they would feel during the course of their day if you wanted them to feel relaxed and cheerful and smiling and optimistic. And at that point, they need to vividly imagine what it feels like to have a smile on their face and to see other people's faces looking at them and how other people respond to them in the social context, and so on and so on. Feeling optimistic, feeling strong, feeling excited for their future. Okay, so that's direct. If the client is further up the CPTSD scale, rather than directly controlling what their subjective experience is, I would start saying, okay, I need to teach you self-hypnosis, and you need to do this to yourself. And the way that we're going to do this is like this. You're going to teach them how to do self-hypnosis. I'll teach you how to do self-hypnosis first, work it with yourself first so that you can then teach it to others. And you would make the suggestions less direct. So you go into a suggestive or indirect methodology where you start talking about there are some people who just can learn to change what they think about on a regular basis. And sometimes these people, not you, client, definitely not you, is learning now to feel differently about things during the day. And those different feelings that come through, they could be relaxation, they could be optimism, they could and so on and so forth. You see what I'm saying? So you can have direct subjective experiencing. Subjective experiencing is basically I have the client live ahead of time their desired emotional state. If the goal state is relaxation, I want you to vividly imagine being relaxed, and then I'm going to put you in your mind in the context where you don't feel relaxed and cause you to feel, to think, to hear, to see relaxed in that context. And at that point, some of you who are smart will be going, this sounds like sports psychology. This is exactly the same as taking a golfer and making him imagine a perfect swing 10 times, or a basketball player and imagine him sticking the ball into the round thing 10 times, 20 times, 30 times. It's like success training. You're training the unconscious, you're training the brain to focus on the goal state, on what you do want. And this, those of you who are listening, is the real power of all of this. And some of you will go, but I already do that, already tried that, and it didn't work. And I would say to you, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. Nobody does. Very, very few people do. And I'll tell you why. The human being has evolved to look for problems and to look for pain. We're trying to see what's wrong in the environment so that we don't die. Where do we take that into the modern world? Well, there's no saber-toothed tigers, not many droughts for those of us who are lucky enough to live in the first world to worry about. Or the Western world to worry about. So the problems that we look for become internal. Where is it wrong? Where does it hurt? What's not right? What isn't as awesome as it could be? Why am I not happier? And what you actually need to retrain people to do, because it's not a natural thing for them to do, is to go, where's it going well? What's working for me right now? What am I doing skillfully right now? Even at the smallest level, what did I do successfully today? Oh my God, I actually did that one small thing really well because I'm good at that one small thing. Was there anything else you did successfully today? Oh yeah, actually, now that you're asking me the question, and sending my brain into a transderivational search, which is the unconscious supercomputer search for meaning, yeah, I can think of another way in which I was successful. I can think of another way in which there was a source for something to make me feel optimistic or excited or have a good sense of anticipation and cheerfulness and energy towards a lighter, brighter future. So as you go through this and you're looking at entering the client's subjective experience, when you're looking to do neurolinguistic programming for yourself, it's the same thing. Sometimes if you're not, NLP wasn't really designed to be done on the self. And I found it very frustrating when I started out in NLP the first 5, 6, 7 years. I was like, great, I know what to do with a client. I know, but I don't have clients. I was young. I was a kid. I think I started out a bit as a counselor when I was 22, but that was cognitive behavioral therapy. We weren't allowed to use NLP. And you actually have to restructure some of the techniques for yourself, but the principles are the same. What you would do with a client, you do with yourself. Cut to the slide again, please, mate. Thank you. Okay. There are 2 golden rules that must be followed when you are telling. So remember, the key to all hypnosis is only 2 things. Get the client to relax, tell them. Tell them what you want them to feel or think or do. The golden rules of how to tell. Number 1 is your state transmits. So if I want my client to feel optimistic, energized, happy, excited for a future, I got to go there first. I can't be like, okay, it's, I guess, maybe now it's time for you to maybe, well, you could feel optimistic. You could feel really, really high energy. You could be so decisive and confident. Actually, it's annoying. It's annoying me. Is it annoying you, Richard? Well, I'm just doing it.
I'm agitated. My eczema's flared up.
You see the power of words and hypnosis. So you've got to go there first. If I want you to feel curious, if I want you to feel happy, I need to be in control of my own state. Therapists and coaches and counselors, if you're not in control of your own state, you have no business doing change work, healing work, therapeutic work with a client. You must go first. Forget about hypnosis, forget about NLP. You need to be in their goal state before they are. The power of this goes beyond normal hypnotic suggestion. This goes straight to the unconscious. It's a very neat little hack. Whatever state I want you to go into, I need to know that I can go there first. The only time I can't go straight there is if I want you in a state of relaxation, but you're when you say you want to be more relaxed, is it because you feel tense during the day, Richard?
Pardon, sorry?
Do you feel tense or agitated during the day? Stressed?
I feel tense, I would say.
Tense. Yeah. So if I have a client who's feeling really, really tense over here, and I want them over here feeling relaxed, but I'm addressing them in the moment when they're at peak tension, they're in their peak non-desired state, and I'm going, no, it's time to feel relaxed. I'm going to break rapport with them, and I'm not going to get them to come with me. So I need to, they call it in NLP pacing and leading. It's the same, just think, it's the same principle as you see in some martial arts where they blend. They blend with the opponent. Judo does it. Tai Chi does it. Aikido does it. I need to go where he is first. This is called pacing. And then I need to bring him where I want him to go. So if he's tense and he's like, I've got all these fucking deadlines I've got to do. I've got all these things that I need to get done by, I've got like 2 hours to do 6 hours work. And he's already tense. I can't hit him with relaxation, because he's not going to build rapport with me. So I need to go to where he is in his tonality, in his body language, because he's pissed off and he's stressed out. And when people get stressed out, you'll notice the way that they speak. It has a very certain tone because they're getting impatient and they're getting agitated. You've got to meet them there. The head movement, the volume, the breathing, everything, that's part of pacing. And then once I've met him there, then slowly, as I'm conversing with him and I can show that I've entered his subjective reality with him, what I can do is we can start talking about, it's very annoying that this has happened, but there maybe are some alternative ways of seeing things in this situation that will make it easier for you to get everything done that you want to get done. And when things are getting done, because you've worked before, right? And you've got things done and you've been really good at it, and you're in the flow and you're in the zone and everything is just getting done so easily, that's when you start to feel a little bit more relaxed. Slightly clumsy because I did it on the fly, but it took about 35 seconds to get from really, really tense and agitated down towards relaxed. And why? Why are we going to be relaxed? Why is it safe for us to go into relaxation? So your state transmits. So golden rule number 1, you must go first. I want you happy. I want you optimistic. I better be in that place first. If I want you decisive and brave, so if you go through the Spartan Life Coach YouTube videos and you want to deconstruct the game I'm playing, decisive and brave is usually the key word. It was like a flippant attitude in the face of things that frighten you. So if you're laughing at demonic entities and going, ha, 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 then that's part of what it's supposed to be. Decisive, brave, feeling confident, and laughing in the face of things that would usually stress you out. Those are some of the key things that are going in there in terms of state. Then you'll notice a bunch of other suggestions, opportunities, possibilities, the creation of new circumstances, etc. If you could switch back, please, sir. The second golden rule, you must be aware that the brain processes commands phrased in the positive, not the negative, and that you are putting ideas into people's heads and that you should be mindful. You've all played this game before, I'm sure, which is don't think about the orange penguin. It's just the way the brain works, right? In order to know what not to do, it needs to imagine it first. So when we say positive rather than negative, I can't tell you what I don't want you to focus on. You can't be telling your brain every day, don't get depressed, don't get stressed, don't get tense, because your brain just goes, depressed and tense and stressed. And it's like a pilot. And it's just going to start steering towards whatever you tell it, whatever you frequently imagine, whatever you frequently say to yourself, the brain will go, oh, that's where you want me to go. And that's exactly where it will go. So if you want the client to feel less tense and more relaxed, for every one time you say the word tense during any kind of therapeutic work with them, you better be saying relaxed and calm and fluid 10 times more, right? With more emotional intensity and more of an emphasis on those things. If you could go back, please, to the slides. Thank you so much. Self-hypnosis. Health hypnosis. Self-help hypnosis. Wowie. Really, really simple. Exactly the same way you would with a person. I said to you before, I only do 5-second trance inductions because getting people into trance is never the fucking issue. Never, never the issue. Getting people into trance, people love going into trance. They just pull out their phones and instantly, I do it. I just pull out my phone and I'm in a trance straight away. So really, really simple. I mean, for me, if I'm doing self-hypnosis, I never take longer than one breath. I'll shut my eyes, breathe in. I'll sit in a cinema screen inside of my head and I'll see the word relax in big white letters on that black screen, and I will let that breath out. And that is as deep into a trance as I need to go. I showed you before how to let your eyes defocus when you look at where the wall meets the ceiling. There's things you could do where you just look at your own hand, you look at the patterns in your hand, bring your hand slightly close to your face and let your eyes defocus. That is enough. You don't need to go deeper than that. There is no need for any, I mean, you know, when we're working with people who have CPTSD and childhood trauma, they have some of the worst, most hard to deal with, most therapeutically challenging issues for us to deconstruct. And you never need to go deeper into trance than that. Deeper into trance does not mean more effective hypnosis. Deeper into trance does not mean more healing, more opportunity, more optimism. It doesn't work like that. There are some things that will affect it that I'll mention in the next section when we start looking at some of the black belt techniques. So to do self-hypnosis, you relax, you do a 5-second trance induction, which is a deep breath, or look at your hand or look at your shoe, tell yourself to relax, deep breath in, slowly let it out. That's enough of a trance. Decide what command you are feeding into the biocomputer, and you need to phrase it into the positive. So in Richard's case, he would tell himself to relax, and then inside of his head, he would say, today I'm going to feel relaxed and fluid, and I'm going to get everything done in a calm state of mind with efficiency, and I'm going to have a good time doing it. And he would repeat that 3 or 4 times whilst inducing a feeling of calm and confidence physically inside of his body. So wherever he feels calm and confidence, in his chest, in his legs, through his arms, wherever that is, he would intensify that feeling, and there's nothing more than that needs to be done. You want to choose how to tell. How to tell. I quite like, if I'm going to do it fast, a direct and authoritative tell. I will either tell myself, you are going to feel this way, or I imagine somebody who I see as a figure of authority telling me that I'm going to feel that way. I like it. It doesn't induce a flashback in me. It doesn't induce any kind of a CPTSD response in me. I go, yep, fine, that's what I'm going to do. Because, I don't know, that just works for me. Some of you out there of a similar personality type, that will work for you. For some of you, that will be dreadful. Don't do it. So if you want to do it in an indirect way, do it indirectly. If you want to do it purely through metaphor, then use metaphor, or through subjective experiencing. Usually, if it's something that is hard, that you're finding a bit of a sticking point, or you've tried a few times and you don't seem to get much traction, stack them. So stack direct, indirect, some metaphor, some subjective experiencing, and try it. Just keep rolling it through and see what works the best for you. Okay, I must stand up for this. Ooh. There are CPTSD specific issues that that we need to address here. So as whether you are a therapist or a coach, or whether you're a client looking to use this stuff yourself for the purpose of self-hypnosis, beware of the flashbacks that are induced by the direct method or by subjective experiencing. Anybody who's a therapist, I'm sure you can figure out why that would be problematic. So if an authority figure is taking control of somebody's subjective experience, this could flashback somebody into the experience of being brainwashed or of being psychologically or physically abused. So avoid that, at least until you've built more rapport with the client, and maybe you have a stronger sense of where their comfort zones are, and that you've built that kind of skill set within them where they feel stronger and they feel more confident in their own ability to do hypnotic type work. Okay, so indirect and metaphorical is usually going to be best until the client gets used to the process. When you're we are in the business as coaches, as therapists, as clients seeking to recover, of affecting people's consciousness and of affecting the way people think and of what they want to get done. I'm going to use the word sell. Don't get freaked out. You do kind of need to sell the client on the idea that this is best for their healing process. You need to guide them to change their beliefs a little bit to the point where they feel comfortable doing it. The way that I would usually do this is to say, look, we're going to alter your consciousness. This is going to be a much faster and more direct route than traditional therapy, which would just leave you to try and find your way here under your own steam. So I'm going to take you here. Now, I don't want this. This is literally what I say, almost literally what I would say word for word. I don't want to just take you and drag you there, because that's weird. The power dynamic is off and you're not going to feel good doing that. I want you to come with me. So we're going to be two consenting, sovereign, independent adults who've agreed ahead of time that we both want you to heal, to move forward, and to have a better quality of life. We're very slowly going to go through this and organically through this process, moving towards that desired goal state only as quickly as you feel comfortable. So you're making the client an active participant in what's going on. This changes the frame for them so that they don't feel like, oh, this is some weird thing that's being done to me. Other people change the word hypnosis. They say, well, we're just going to do visualizations. I did do that for a couple of years, but I kind of feel it's dishonest. Like it's hypnosis. Hypnosis is a good tool. I don't want to change it to visualization because visualization is one element of what hypnosis is. It's hypnosis, but it's real hypnosis. It's not junk hypnosis. So you want to be guiding them towards that goal state. You need to be careful how that is expressed. You're a consenting participant with a shared goal, and you want to make sure that they feel like they're in control of it. Okay, I'm going to teach you a good trick that will work with any client, but is essential to use with clients with CPTSD who have a very strong outer and inner critic. This is critical for your CPTSD clients. So you're going to, I sometimes call this politico speak because it's the way politicians talk when they're under pressure. They'll be like, yes, the budget. Well, there is a chance that maybe at some time I could possibly have some of my people look at what the figures were 3 years ago and we could see what the projections might be in another 5 years' time. The problem is if you're too direct with a client who has a very inflamed inner critic or outer critic and you go, I want you to feel good. They'll be like, I don't deserve to feel good. I want you to feel more optimistic about the future. I don't want to feel more optimistic about the future. I don't deserve to feel optimistic about the future. That's the inner critic. Or I say, well, now we're going to do some work where we're just going to deal with some of these anxiety and tension issues that you've had and get you to a place where you feel more relaxed. And then the outer critic flares up and they go, fuck you, who are you to tell me how I feel? Even though 3 seconds ago, they're like, no, you're helping me and I like this process. They're not going to be able to help but reject the assistance that you're offering them, because that's part of CPTSD. It deconstructs the therapeutic process. It deconstructs some of the healing as you go. So the politico speak or word salading that we would do with positive intent, there's one example of a phrase that could be used. And I don't know whether a person would want to create the possibility of one day experiencing in safety an opportunity for growth now or sometime in the future when they feel ready. This is a roundabout way of saying feel good now. Just feel better now, but you can't say that. So you go, I don't know, maybe at some point in the future you could learn to create the possibility with time when you're comfortable that you could start to feel like maybe it's time to learn to feel good. So we go all the way around the houses, and what we're trying to do is not activate the superego. We're trying to not activate and inflame the inner and outer critic. I've taught this numerous times to people with CPTSD who struggled with hypnosis and self-hypnosis, and every single time I've taught it, it's worked. It has been the solution 100% of the time for people who've got CPTSD. So too direct would be, you feel anxious, feel relaxed now. It's too direct. The inner critic will just bang that right back. So we go, We sneak around. We sneak around the guards, and that's how we get into the palace, through that. We sneak. We don't wake them up. You go, maybe one day we could learn to create the opportunity of the possibility of feeling relaxed, where we used to feel tense and stressed. There is Ericksonian language that is being used there, which is like, it's black belt second dan stuff. It's cool. And if you're a nerd for hypnosis and language patterns, then go learn it, but you really don't need it. Anybody can use the rest of the stuff that I've taught you without that. Okay, so that's one level of CPTSD specific issue. Black belt skills. I'm not going to linger on these because you don't need them to make hypnosis or self-hypnosis work. If you guys want me to go through all this, it's covered by other people, probably better than I could anyway. But if you want me to teach you this, send a request through via email and I'll do it. But in brief, embedded commands is exactly what it sounds like. If I want you to feel good now, then I can embed the words feel good now within a longer sentence. I was talking to a client of mine the other day, and he was working on his racquetball serve, and he said that he had a problem with his knee, but he'd actually been to a physio, and that as he went through and back and did his serve, he was starting to feel good now about what he was doing in this new space. And you go, what? How's that going to work? The unconscious picks it up. The unconscious picks all of these things up. If you watch my YouTube videos, there are embedded commands every 3-4 minutes about feeling good, feeling relaxed. People can learn to be brave. Sometimes you can feel differently. I put embedded commands everywhere when I'm talking, when I want people to feel a different way. There's linguistic ambiguity. This is really, really high level stuff, but it's basically linguistic ambiguity is usually used to either embed a command or to invoke curiosity. So the person who's listening goes, what did he just say? I'm not sure I heard that right. There's all kinds of different examples of linguistic ambiguity, but the only ones I can think of right now are pornographic, so I'm going to move past that. Fractionation and repetition, hugely important. You can never really just do hypnosis once. You're going to have to do it 20 or 30 times. Now, why? Whenever we do therapy, if I write on this, can you tighten into it? So if we're ever going to do therapy, which is healing, right? If therapy is going to work, it needs to be a kind of healing. I'm sure everybody would agree with that. If we're going to do healing, then we have to induce change. And change, I know that this is counterintuitive, but like I said in the beginning, this is my weird way of thinking about it, and this is what works for me. It needs to be a learning, and learning is always a skill, and skill is always dependent on repetition, because I can spell. So therapy becomes skill, the learning of new skills. And you can't learn new skills without repetition. That's the way the neurobiology of the human being is set up. You need to lay down that neural pathway, and then you need to walk down that pathway again and again and again and again until it becomes like a muscle fiber. It gets stronger and bigger and more used to what it is that you're trying to do. So there's always going to be an element of learning there that needs to take place. Fractionation is it means something else normally than it does in hypnosis specifically. In hypnosis specifically, fractionation is the process of bringing the client into and out of trance. So let me see if I can wrap all these things together. Hypnosis and going into trance work and doing change work and healing and doing NLP, the client over time learns to develop the skill of doing change work, of doing healing work, of doing NLP through repetition. So they go into trance and back out. So if this is trance, which is just focus for change, they're going in and out. And they go in, out, in, out, in, out, over and over and over again until you'll see this with a client. Or if you do self-hypnosis with yourself over and over again, you'll see it for yourself. You bring them in, and you go, oh, we're just going to do some light trance work. And they'll be like, oh, yeah, great. Okay. And you go, could you just sit down and just go into trance? I'll go, I certainly can. Boom, down they go, straight into a trance. because it feels good. Only good things have ever happened for me doing trance work. Of course, I'm going to go ahead and do it now on command, because that's exactly what I want, is to feel good, is to heal, is to change. So hypnosis itself becomes a kind of learning. So over time, you want to use fractionation and repetition in order for that neural network to be built. And it will never be done in one session, or very, very rarely will it be done in one session. And you will say to me, but my Aunt Mary went to a hypnotist one time and she never smoked again. And what I would say is it's probably the case, if it worked, that during that one session, he put her into trance and brought her out of it, and put her in and brought her out and put her in and brought her out several times. That's probably what would have happened, which is why it worked for her. So fractionation is hugely important. If you want me to go deeper into it another time, I will. When you're watching YouTube videos, when you're watching my YouTube videos, or anybody's YouTube videos, that's a kind of fractionation. You're going into trance and out of it, into trance and out of it. And every time you go back in and you alter your consciousness and tune in, you're going to draw something fresh from it. So fractionation is very, very powerful. You also want to be good at building rapport, at pacing, and at leading. So building rapport, usually what we would do for building rapport would be mirroring. Mirroring is it's like NLP 101. So whatever the person does with their body language, what they do with their volume, their tone of voice, their breathing, the rate at which words come out of their mouth, you want to go there too, and you want to match them. Once you've built that rapport, then you can start to pace them, go along with them, and then lead them where you want them to go. The last little black belt skill is, every time you do this work with people, is treat the entire interaction from start to finish as a hypnotic trance induction. Assume during the whole healing therapeutic session that you're always giving them at all times hypnotic suggestions. You're always telling them how to feel, what to think, and what to do. So you never want to be saying anything that you don't want them to carry away in the unconscious, that they're going to follow as a literal instruction. Always treat everything that you say to them as a literal instruction that the brain will take as such, in a very direct way. If you could cut back to I've forgotten my English. Okay. The implications for CPTSD, this is for the clients watching. This is for people who are trying to heal from CPTSD. I guess some of the therapists and change agents watching are also having to deal with some CPTSD issues too, so it'd be relevant for you. You do need to learn what a pattern interrupt is. The unconscious responses and patterns, like emotional flashbacks, these all need to be pattern interrupted. Very simply, a pattern interrupt is any time a person starts to go into a pattern for feeling bad or going into an emotional flashback, you need to teach them to interrupt that pattern. So right now, there's a free ebook that's out there that a ton of you got that's just called How to Stop an Emotional Flashback. And I teach a technique, a hand mnemonic technique. And it's really nothing, very little more in principle than a pattern interrupt. So where you would usually unconsciously and helplessly get sucked into an emotional flashback, I give you the weapons to fight back and go, no, I'm not going to go there right now. And it takes, like, I don't know, read the book, watch the video that goes with the book, and inside of an hour and a half, you should have a skill set that you can start working straight away. You could be at the mercy of emotional flashbacks in the morning and be starting to take control of them by the evening. And it is literally that dramatic. And it only uses the key principle from hypnosis and neurolinguistic programming of pattern interrupts. It's just to stop your neurology from going back through the skill set that I mentioned before, through these neural patterns that it keeps on going through. So you need to train the unconscious to be focused on self-care and on state management, and to guide you away from emotional flashbacks before they even begin. All of that training, much like you would do in martial arts or in a self-defense class, must be done ahead of time. There's very little I can teach you to do physically in a fight that would be like, oh, what did Richard tell me to do? Oh, I should kick him in the balls. You won't remember. You won't be able to do that. You've got to prepare ahead of time. You need to drill it. And if you're serious about this, if you really want to heal, then you will drill it. In the same way as they would in the military, that's what you're going to do in your life to not feel this way. You drill it over and over and over again until it's boring. It's going to be super boring. And at times it's going to suck. But you know what's not going to suck? Is never being stuck inside of emotional flashbacks ever again. I've got people coming to me saying that inside of 6 weeks, they've completely healed their own CPTSD. This is from a DOM-free ebook that teaches you one technique. So use it. You want to train the unconscious mind to know what to do when a flashback has already started. So even within the flashback, you want to be rooted and mindful. If you can say to yourself during a flashback, this is a flashback, this is not me, then you're 50% winning that battle. You want to actually, in reality, be doing or saying as little as possible until it passes. Because when we do and say things inside of an emotional flashback, we do and say things that make us act like dicks. And that is not a good response. So somewhere between mindfulness meditation and hypnotic training is what is required here. And its main purpose should be so that you as a client during an emotional flashback can stay rooted. And there is really no difference between mindfulness meditation and hypnotic training. It's the same state. Emotional literacy exercises that I've been advocating and banging that drum for a while now. These are actually unconscious training methods to get you, it's kind of like a hidden hypnosis to get you to acknowledge your own needs and yourself. So the reason why the emotional literacy exercises work, it's not quite what it says on the tin. And it's not that I'm being deceptive and being a tool. It's that I know that if I tell you what's happening, a lot of you would just reject it and not do it. So that's why the way I phrased it as, you know, these are exercises that you do to develop your emotional literacy so that you can X, Y, and Z. What's actually happening in reality is that you're retraining, and this is why I can't say this because people just go, ugh, I'm not doing that. You're retraining the neurology to treat your emotions, which if you have CPTSD, I'm not going to say your heart, but the place where emotions comes from and is processed is infected. It has a software virus. Doing the emotional literacy exercises grinds out, massages out the little pieces and bits of infection that are in there to the point where they all clear up, they all go away. How? Emotional flashbacks and CPTSD cause you to shove nasty feelings away. Bad feelings, awful feelings, dreadful, ugh. What happens? Good feelings get shoved away, happy feelings get shoved away, and then what do you end up with? You end up with a client who's anxious and depressed and has no sex drive and no desire to move forward because they're used to shoving everything down into the unconscious. You do emotional literacy, you start to unpack the emotions. Ooh, what am I doing? I'm doing exactly what the parents should have done for me, which is catered to how I feel. So our model for loving ourselves is a direct reflection of how our parents love us. So you're reparenting yourself. Now, if I start talking about the neurology and reparenting the self, some people are going to be like, no, I don't want to do that. Sounds scary. So I just say, hey, it's an emotional literacy exercise. And they go, oh, yeah, okay, I'll try that. That sounds all right. All of this stuff where you're mind mapping how you feel, that's to get you into a trance-like state, back like childhood, so that you feel open and relaxed and calm, and so you can externalize and pattern interrupt the emotions that you're going through. CPTSD's primary manifestation is emotional flashbacks. The secondary manifestation is the impact on the inner critic and the outer critic, which is an infection of the superego. So that's why we do the emotional literacy, just to work you through these emotional flashbacks. Okay. The implications for CPTSD for coaches. I know I'm running over time a little bit, so I will go through these rapidly. For coaches, my advice to you when you're working with clients with CPTSD, be calm, be patient, be compassionate. People with CPTSD, people like me, are a pain in the arse as clients. At the beginning of the session, make sure you set the intention for the session, that you guide and manage their state primarily, because CPTSD's primary manifestation is emotional. You want to be helping them to get in charge of their emotional state before the session even begins. Use the golden rules I gave you before, which is that the brain cannot process negative commands. You must process all hypnotic commands in the positive, and that you must go first. Whatever state you want them in, presumably calm, focused, switched on, and determined, you need to go there first. Working with clients with CPTSD is tough. Clients with CPTSD need you, the coach, to feel to them They need to feel that you are grounded, that you are protecting, that you are safe, stable, calm, confident, and certain. So they're tethering to you in a certain sense, and you are their mooring. So they will test the safety of the mooring sometimes. So some clients with CPTSD, some clients with borderline tendencies will test you. When a client is testing your moorings to see how stable and calm and protected you are for them, how will they do that? Usually by being a dick, usually by being immature, by being selfish, by being provocative, by being insulting, by either insulting you or by insulting the process. And then it's down to you to decide where your limitations and where your boundaries are, and where you think that client is coming from. If you think they're coming from an intent that is essentially positive, or an intent that is essentially just to create chaos and to destroy the process. But they need you, wherever they're at on that CPTSD scale, they need you calm, confident, and deeply rooted. And they'll mirror you, they'll model from you. You're going to teach them how to handle negative emotions. And then it becomes a kind of parenting exercise. They're going to look to you to see how you handle the chaos of their experience and of their emotions, which is why I say to coaches, when clients tell you stuff that is bad, that happened to them, don't flinch. Never flinch. Because if they see you flinch, they're not going to feel safe. They're going to feel judged. They're going to feel criticized. They're going to feel like you don't understand their subjective experience. Whatever they say to you, no matter how awful it is, you've got to take it like somebody just asked if you want a cheese sandwich. You go, yeah, because you're a coach and you're in that authoritative position. So they need to feel safe with you. They need to feel that there is a boundary, safe space there. If a client is talking to you about something that you don't feel qualified to talk about, just tell them straight up. Just say, I've never dealt with that and I don't want to. Beware that traditional hypnosis might make the client feel invaded and dominated. I've hammered this point enough, so I won't hammer it again. It's even better to teach the client self-hypnosis, which means that the client then will feel like they themselves are in charge. So it's less likely to induce an emotional flashback. Okay, to recap, you're going to choose a goal state, whether you're doing hypnosis somebody else or you're doing it to yourself. And you need to choose that with clarity and specificity. So you need to say, I feel tense during the day. I would like to feel relaxed and joyous and optimistic and cheerful and efficient instead. So you choose that as your goal state and make it explicit, make it clear. Don't be vague and be like, I want to feel better. You need to be like, no, I need this, 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 and this. They're like the ingredients on the side of a tin. Optimism, cheerfulness, excitement, determination. Let's get this fucking thing going. Bah! And that's exactly what you're going to aim for. Then there's nothing else. You relax and you tell. So get yourself into a relaxed state. A 5 to 15 second trance induction is easily enough. And then you tell. You're either going to tell authoritatively, directly, indirectly, through metaphor, or through subjective experiencing, or most powerfully, a combination of all four, bearing in mind that for some clients with CPTSD, the direct approach and the subjective experiencing approach is something that they should probably try to be in charge of. Keep it light, keep it playful, take feedback. So you want feedback. Like, don't just do this because I told you to, or because it's part of some gimmick to make them feel comfortable. Get feedback from your client. Every person is different. Their unique style is going to be as unique to them as their own thumbprint. The way that you do therapy is going to be different every time. Experienced coaches and therapists are watching this going, yeah, it is. It's different every time. Anybody who thinks that they get to turn up to work as a change agent, as somebody who's going to offer healing and just deliver some cookie cutter system, is going to have a very rude awakening. You can't do that. You have to create new solutions on the fly, and we're always tailor making the therapeutic process to that individual. And if you're not for doing that, get a different job, go and do something else, because you're not going to do your clients any favors. Be curious, explore the possibilities. And if you're a coach, convey that curiosity, that will to investigate, that will to solve puzzles, to find solutions, to go where other people haven't been willing to go. Because if you're working in a coaching role or a therapeutic role, you might have a client come to you who's already been through 5, 10, 15 other people. So you want to be like, oh, that's interesting. There's obviously something going on here that nobody's been able to deal with, but maybe me and you can figure it out. Maybe we'll figure out what this thing really is. And then you should go into it with that attitude. If you do keep it light and playful on the hypnosis and NLP front, you're going to get really, really strong results. Okay, just the last thing, and then we will start taking questions. You'll get really, really good results when you do this with the right intent. You should always have a positive intent. And the intent is healing. That's why I've said the word heal, 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 and healing so many times during this session. Trust in the process. It is super simple. It is ridiculously simple. It is absurdly simple. It is so simple that after this seminar where you're feeling all inspired and motivated and you want to go out and try it, there's a little voice in your head is going to go, can't be that fucking simple. There needs to be something else. There isn't. You get the client to relax, you get them to focus on one thing, and you tell them what you want them to think, feel, or do. You tell them directly or indirectly through subjective experiencing or through metaphor. There is nothing else. Don't get fancy. Fancy sucks balls. That's the last line. Can you cut to that, Richard? I want everybody to read that with their eyes. Fancy sucks balls.
Fancy sucks balls.
See, the hypnosis is just working so well. This is how my cult starts. When they make the documentary, they'll be like, this is where Richard Grannon's cult started.
Where it started.
Right here.
Yeah, FSB.
FSB, baby. Am I all right sitting down? Am I still in shot? Yeah. Okie dokie. Mr. Richard, could we please have some questions?
I think it's going to take a little bit. So, guys, we are open for questions now. So, please, in the Wise chat, pop your questions. Make sure it's in the Wise chat and not on YouTube. We will not see them. So, we're just waiting now. So, any guys? Elliot, I can see you've just joined. Stella, you've just left. Come back to us. if a Daisy Jane, anyone would like to ask Richard some questions, I will relay them to him and we will move on to the second part of this.
Remember, guys, that a question should be one sentence, please, and should end in some kind of a question mark rather than like, you know, a story. And then people tell me like a long story. They'll write me an essay of a story and they'll go, what do you think? I was like, oh.
Okay, so we've got Anonymous 103. EM asks, how do you regain rapport in sessions if you break it?
Don't break rapport. It's really, it can be, it depends on the vulnerability of the client and what their personality is like. I mean, it's strictly for the therapists, for the coaches. Rapport is just gold dust. I mean, it's the single most important thing you have when you're teaching, when you're doing healing work, or when you're doing a seminar. Because if you have a really high level of rapport, whatever dreadful thing that you do, whatever mistake you make, or you don't show up on time, or, you know, whatever, if you have rapport, you'll be forgiven for everything. When you have no rapport, it doesn't matter how awesome the material is or how amazing your therapeutic process is, the client's going to reject it. So in one scenario, you have tons of rapport, pretty much, you know, everything will be forgiven and everything will be accepted or at least considered. In another scenario, you have no rapport and nothing will be accepted and nothing will be forgiven. If you've done something where you broke rapport with a client and it's temporary, you need to address it. You should be like, you know, I made a joke there trying to lighten the mood and it wasn't the right joke to tell, or you just didn't find it funny and I can tell you didn't, and I think I insulted you and I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. Not showing up on time, asking a client a question that they don't want to answer, and not reading the non-verbal cues properly. That, you know, there's a ton of ways of breaking rapport. If you can address it, apologize, and you know, if you apologize in the right way, it can actually end up strengthening the rapport.
Are you done now?
I am.
Yeah.
Drink.
So Ian says that was excellent. Thank you, Ian. That's very kind of you.
Cheers,
I do
Ian.
like your blue typing. Everyone's got different coloured typing, which is
cool. Okay, that's nice.
So Ian says that was excellent, and thank you. Do you recommend any additional sources?
Just me. I mean, I am the pure source of all wisdom. I mean, Rich is nodding.
I'm nodding.
Yeah. I think probably, well, for me, I'm a fanboy. So 80s Bandler, and there's other fanboys on YouTube who've uploaded the stuff. There is a certain flavor to young Richard that I really, really, really like. It's super arrogant. It's extremely abrasive. It's very rebellious. It's like you can tell he's doing it in opposition to what most mainstream therapy is doing. So I really like 80s Bandler. Other hypnosis, you know, Paul McKenna. some people really don't like Paul's style because of the radio training that he went through, and he's a DJ first and he never let it go. He still does all hypnosis like this. Well, yeah, it's cheesy. He still does the radio DJ voice, but damn, he's a good hypnotist. And when it comes to language patterns and stuff, he's really, really good. So I know he's released a couple of books and videos and audio courses. I think anything by him, he's a trusted source.
That's great. There we go. We're just, again, lots of questions firing in now. So this is really
see, one person asked a question and everybody else gets brave. Yeah, I see what's happening here.
Now it's flooding through. So Ella, actually, Ella's answered her. Bear with me. Anonymous 92. Do you tell, this is really good, do you tell clients they have CPTSD or just help them with the symptoms?
Most of my clients, well, I don't see coaching clients anymore, or very, very rarely. But most people who come to me, they come to me through YouTube. And so they're already self-diagnosed, which is good and bad because some people are wrong. And they don't like it when I tell them that they've not got it right. So yeah, most people would know that. But would I tell them if it was a fresh client and they came through another source? Probably not, unless I thought it was essential to the healing process. I mean, I tend to assume there isn't that much time during a session to get things done. And so I try to be as time efficient as possible. So say if like somebody comes to me with anxiety and sleeplessness and I'm like, oh shit, this person has CPTSD, and I have 2 hours with them, I'm not going to spend 20 minutes trying to explain what the hell CPTSD is. It's going to overload their brains. So it would depend on the context.
Okay, so let me just scroll down here. Sarah said, thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
And how often do you recommend doing self-hypnosis?
It depends on what it's for, and how, you've got to get feedback from yourself. Like if you were, say, if you were feeling tense and you wanted to feel more relaxed, then I would be doing it as many times as I needed to until I got to the point. There's always a way of knowing whether hypnosis has worked, whether it's done on the self or somebody else has done it for you, where suddenly you just find yourself doing that thing. And you won't realize that you're there until afterwards. So in Richard's case, if we worked with Richard and he was tense and we wanted him to be relaxed during a working day, he actually wouldn't know until he got home at 9 o'clock at night. And then he went, oh shit, I was actually really relaxed today. And I did all the things that I said I would do in the hypnotic trance work. And that should happen inside of like 3 or 4 sessions. Because the brain just goes, it's like R2-D2. It's like, oh, okay, you gave me a command. I guess I'm just going to do that then. Why wouldn't I? This is the thing I want people to become aware of, is we're actually accidentally, a lot of us, giving ourselves commands to feel depressed and feel anxious during the course of the day, but we're not mindful of the fact that we're doing that either through subjective experiencing, scaring ourselves with things that happened in the past, or actually saying, when was the last time I felt depressed? How long did it go on for? Why did it happen? And then you're focused on that. So you change the focus and go, oh, I want to feel optimistic. I want to feel cheerful. I want to feel energized. When was the last time I felt really energized and really optimistic? And you send your brain and the unconscious in that. You spin it off in that new direction. I actually forgot what the question was. Wowie.
Ella asks, as soon as he did it, shot up the screen, didn't it? So let me just scroll, just speak amongst yourself. Ella asks, I've a messed up thought relating to my traumatic past that comes up during sex with my boyfriend. How can I get rid of it with self-hypnosis and NLP?
The messed up thought that comes up during sex. So usually around the issue of sex, unfortunately, because of, I don't know, culture, human history, where we're up to, is we still live in a very sexually repressed society. Sex is one of these powerful unconscious energies that we probably all suspect on an unconscious level could tear society at the very fabric of reality could tear. So we're all a bit jumpy about it. So anything that's related to sex, you probably already have the skill set of pushing the stuff away and pushing it down. Whatever the fucked up thought is, it needs to be permitted, because what you resist persists. And if you just push it down, it's only going to come back elsewhere. I think that's sublimation in Freudian psychoanalysis. But I think that genuinely happens. You should accept whatever the thought is, invite it in, look at it and go, hello, thought of strangeness that pops up at inappropriate moments when I'm trying to have a nice time with my boyfriend. I wonder what this is all about. Get curious about it. Is the thought or the impulse trying to warn you about something? Is it trying to make you safe? If it's trying to make you safe and it's going, hey, being sexually intimate with a male is really dangerous and you should be careful, then you can say, hey, thought, thanks very much for showing up and telling me that being sexually intimate with a male, as I was non-consensually at another point in my past, I'm freestyling, I have no idea what the experience is. Thank you for letting me know that that's not safe, but I'm an adult now. This man loves me and I love him, and that's not the same thing. But please don't stop sending me warnings, because I want my intuition to work. Please keep sending me warnings. Thank you for showing up with that message, but it's actually not relevant right now. See you later, thought, and see if that works.
Okay, Janie, I missed your question because it shot up the screen, but I'll come back to it now. Will this technique work to get my narc out of my head? Been NC for 7 months. NC, what's it
NC, NPD, CPTSD, and NC, homie.
Yeah.
Do you speak a lingo?
USA. I don't know.
Yeah. It means no contact.
Oh, okay, cool.
So you can't really, the brain and the unconscious don't really process negatives. Remember the golden rule I gave you before for this technique? So rather than being like, I don't want to think about my ex, I don't want to think about my ex, much like the last lady who's got a thought that's popping up during sex and she's like, I don't want to think that thought. Well, when you tell your brain, I don't want to think that thought, that's what it's going to think. So I like to provide alternatives that are tasty, alternatives that are juicy, alternatives that are exciting, that's going to make the brain go, ooh, yeah, let's do that. So with the last lady, the technique would be we investigate what that thought is, and then we put a new thought in place, which would be like, I don't know, I don't want to get too sexually graphic here, but something related to sex and sexual pleasure that relates to her present scenario with the adult that she's in love with. You can see where I'm going with this one, I'm sure. Use your imaginations. So similarly with the no contact, what's the positive other option? I don't want to think about this bad person and the bad relationship that I had. Well, you can't not think about an orange penguin. So you do want to think about, I don't know, what do you want to think about? Being in love with somebody who's really cool. The experience of being in a loving relationship with a really, really good person in the future, and what that would look like and how that would make you feel and how good you could make another person feel by loving them. So we take the brain, we take the unconscious in that new direction. So I wouldn't be doing hypnosis with you going, don't think about the ex narcissist. The process would be every time you get triggered through loneliness or feelings of loss, start thinking about how good it's going to feel when you do meet somebody who's right for you and how good it is to be in love with somebody else in the future.
Okay, Lisa asks, your work with juvenile youth is spoken about much. I think your work in CPTSD could be helpful in a rehabilitation of juvenile offenders or abused kids. Do you think NLP or self-hypnosis will be helpful in treating juvenile offenders? And that's from Lisa.
Yeah, man. I mean, NLP and hypnosis is just, it's kind of like juice that helps any other technique to work. I mean, you could use just purely NLP and hypnosis on its own, or you could use other therapeutic modalities and you could just inject the hypnotic and NLP juice into it to accelerate it and make it a bit stronger and make it longer lasting. But yeah, it could definitely work with young offenders with CPTSD for sure. Help them heal whatever trauma it is that's driving them to engage in the pattern of behavior, and then invite them to engage in new patterns of behavior.
Okay, Pippi asks, what if I get anxious every time I try self-hypnosis? And the rest of it just shot up the screen. That wasn't part of the question. That was me thinking out loud.
I get anxious when I try self-hypnosis and it shoots up the screen.
Pippi asks, what if I get anxious every time I try self-hypnosis, even gentle, suggestive, and self-hypnosis? So she gets anxious when she tries them.
Yeah, then the emotional flashbacks and the inner critic is too strong, and you need to work on your emotional literacy, which is what I've been telling you to do for the last year, Pippi von Pippitons. You've got to work on your emotional flashbacks. You've got to reduce the emotional flashbacks, and you've got to work on your emotional literacy. Nothing is going to work until that is sorted out first, and you need to be doing that every day, regularly. When you have the sliding scale of CPTSD, if people are quite high up the scale, like nothing that would help them will ever work, because the inner critic fires off and goes, no, I don't want you to get better. We won't do that. Stop it. So if a person is at like a 7 or an 8, then nothing can really get through. So you got to heal the emotional flashbacks first and develop that emotional literacy too.
Okay, Stella says, oi, oi.
Oi, oi.
Gretchen asks, sorry about this, guys. It's shooting up the screen. I'm swear he can hear me.
It's because you're using a Mac.
It is, isn't it? Yeah. I think Zuckerberg's having a laugh.
Yeah.
Gretchen asks, does one go cross-eyed or look through an object when unfocusing, or is it something else?
What? Does one go cross-eyed?
Let me read that again. Gretchen asks, does one go cross-eyed
I don't
or look
know.
through an object when unfocusing, or is it something else?
Well, I don't go cross-eyed in order to relax, and I haven't developed the ability to look through objects at this point. It's something I'm working on along with levitation, but just look and let your eyes defocus and relax and keep it simple.
Anonymous 6 asks, sorry if I'm repeating, but I can't see my question. Can this method be as effective for 7 to 10-year-olds? I think I may be one. For a 7 to... No, that was totally read wrong. Sorry. Can this method be as effective for a 7 to 10? I think I may be one. I think it's 7 to 10 on the scale. Oh,
I was like, a 7 to 10-year-old, I was thinking, yeah. I may be one. It's like, well, it's past your bedtime, go to bed. Yeah, it is. But as I just said to the last lady, like CPTSD, not so much the emotional flashbacks, but the inner critic and the outer critic, which is CPTSD language for the superego. The superego will try and block healing from coming through because it doesn't want you to heal, because it's the hijacked part of you that is sort of manifesting abusive and destructive messages. So it doesn't want you to heal in the same way that your highly narcissistic and abusive parents didn't want you to fly too high, didn't want you to leave them, didn't want you to make them look not better than you. So it's like a hyper competitive parent, narcissistically abusive parent that you've got running inside of your head, and it won't let you do it. So if you're at a 7 to 10, it will depend person to person. Some people love self-hypnosis. So when I was very, very badly struggling with CPTSD, self-hypnosis still worked for me. For other people, like the last lady who was asking, it doesn't work. It becomes a fresh trigger. So try it and see what you get. Be gentle though. Be kind to yourself and go slow.
Stella asks, I have an assessment coming up for train driving mid-May, 4th time lucky. Well, yeah, the best of luck.
Hope so.
Yeah. Brain keeps saying, nope, bye. Should I start self-hypnosis now every day? Right, so I think it's negative thoughts.
Negative thoughts about her train driving.
Yeah, whether she can pass
it. Yeah, I would think self-hypnosis would be a really good tool for that. If everything else is in place and you've done your flight time or train time, whatever you call it, and you feel like you have the skill to do a good job safely as a train driver, then yes, absolutely use self-hypnosis to try and get you to the point where you feel confident enough to smash through that exam.
Okay, so Anonymous says, hi, another question, repeat. How can CBT be used most effectively? Oh, sorry, no, that isn't right. How can, CBT be used most effectively? I can only get 6 sessions on the NHS.
CBT is not really an appropriate tool for CPTSD. It's too blunt an instrument to penetrate CPTSD, in my humble opinion. If you had a very, very good CBT coach, they could make it work. But then we used to have this argument in martial arts, like there are martial arts coaches out there who can make the crappiest systems imaginable work. See, the problem with CBT for me, like a lot of psychology systems, is it's very naive. It presumes that, it doesn't allow for things like emotional flashbacks. It doesn't allow for things like hyper active outer critic and inner critic issues. So it'll just go, oh, you want to feel more confident? Write down 5 reasons why feeling more confident would benefit you and how to get there. It's a bit like that.
Jelena asks, any specifics if the session is, bear with me guys, I'm sorry about this, but it keeps shooting up the screen. Any specifics if the session is done in a foreign language or a multicultural setting?
Any specifics?
Yeah, that's what it says. I mean specifics as in... So Jelena, can you just make that more specific for us? So do you mean specifics as in sources, resources?
Yeah, maybe a bit more specificity.
Yeah.
Jelena, that might be Yelena.
Jelena.
Yelena.
Yeah, just if you could add something to that, and we'll come back to that.
We'll come back to that.
Look out for you, and bear with me. So let me just scroll down. How Anonymous 115 asks, how can I get past the feeling of anger and hurt when a therapist is not flinching? I feel as though I am looking in the face of my emotionally neglectful mother. Is this a trigger?
Yeah, you've just answered your own question there. You're feeling like your therapist is not understanding you and isn't compassionate to what's going on for you. So yes, that is a trigger. There might just be a therapist who's not right for you as well. I mean, it's really something you should raise with them, see how they handle that when you raise it with them. And, you know, be compassionate to where the therapist is coming from, be compassionate to yourself, and ask yourself what it is that you would like. I mean, it's no good for you to have a therapist either who starts crying when you tell them stories like that. So what do you want? Presumably you would like some kind of acknowledgement that is from a boundaried place. So, you know, without having been there and without knowing you, there isn't really too much I can offer you on that other than say it would really depend on what's going on there. If the therapist just isn't acknowledging what you're experiencing, then yeah, that isn't great. But you also need to ask, what is it you want your therapist to respond with?
Okay, just bear with me. Let me just scroll down.
I'm pretty stony faced. Like if you do therapy with me, I might say that sounds bad or that must have been very painful for you, but there's no, I'm not the type of therapist who goes, oh gosh, oh no. I just don't find that useful.
Eva M asks, is there any way to get better at word salad and metaphors?
Practice. Everything that I've shown you tonight, ladies and gents, you've got to practice. So whether you're doing it with other people, like the principles I've just taught are simple, but for you to be doing it with other people competently, it's going to take time for you to develop that kind of confidence and skill that is unconscious. So you need to have practiced it to the point where it's a completely unconscious skill set for you. And that time will probably be measured in months rather than days. And as for working it with yourself, yeah, just repeat, practice, and develop the skill.
So guys, just a quick quick bit of tips. So if you put a comment in, you press return, it disappears into the wonders of the internet and probably comes out on MySpace somewhere. So if you press send, it will come to us. It just takes a little while. So Pippi von Pepperson, fantastic name. What is an example of hypnotic suggestion for someone who is scared of intimacy?
It depends on what your goal state is. I mean, there are all kinds of reasons why a fear of intimacy may be an appropriate response for a period of time. So what's the goal state? If your goal state is that you want to feel good about intimacy, then guess what the language would be? It would be, I want to feel confident and calm and relaxed about intimacy. And the subjective experiencing would be feeling confident, calm, and relaxed in the face of intimacy.
Anonymous 126 asks, could you talk more about pattern interrupts and what they consist of?
Yes, a pattern interrupt is where you very, very simply, you put something in place that involves a giant elephant cock.
Don't cut to me just then.
You put something in place that it is either shocking or bizarre or inappropriate, and it doesn't go in that place. So your pattern is like, hello, good morning, how are you? And the other person goes, I'm very well, and how are you? If you say, hello, good morning, how are you? And they go, giant elephant cocks. You'd be like, what the friggin' hell is he talking about? It's a deliberate disruptor that creates a shock state in the recipient so that you can put something new in instead. So if somebody had a pattern of feeling tense at work and there was a certain strategy and a certain series of of behaviors they would go through to get to the point where they felt really tense in work, you would need to interrupt that pattern and do something new with them. And it would probably be something, me personally, it would be something physical. They would actually have to physically do something fresh and different to not go into that place. So a pattern interrupt is anything that interrupts the unconscious pattern the person is going through. It comes quite literally in hypnosis. A pattern interrupt is things like reaching for somebody's hand, so they go to shake your hand and you grab their hand and turn the hand towards their face and say, now look into your palm and let your eyes defocus and blah, blah, blah. It's a bit cheesy and theatrical, so I don't do stuff like that. But you'll see hypnotists and stage hypnotists, they'll do visual wipes. They'll run the hand across the eyes so that you can't see what you would normally see. That also is a pattern interrupt. A lot of the things that you get people to do during hypnosis is a pattern interrupt. If I sit in a room with you and go, sit in this chair and close your eyes, and I'm going to be talking to you, that's a pattern interrupt, which means it's a fucking weird thing to do. You wouldn't normally, in the normal course of human interaction with other adults, do that. So anything that is an interrupter of your usual unconscious patterns is a pattern interrupt.
Jelena, she's back. If I pronounce your name wrong, I do apologise. If it's gone straight up the old.
Has it shot up the screen?
It's shot up the screen. We'll make.
Because you're going to have to give it a wipe afterwards, aren't you?
Not on my Mac. If a hypnosis session is done in a foreign language, are there any specifics regarding the approach, and would the effect be the same regardless of the language?
Well, it depends on how well you speak the language. I mean, if you gave me that hypnotic pattern induction in Croatian, I'm not going to, it might be, if you have a nice voice, I mean, I might relax, but I don't, that's a daft question, that, because if your grasp of that language is really poor, then you're going to get ambiguous meaning from what the hypnotist is saying. Don't do hypnotherapy in a language that you don't really understand, like very, very fluently, because they might use a term that you get completely wrong and start to assume the incorrect meaning from it.
Okay, Pippa Daisy Chain asked, will there be notes available from this? She said she can't see the slides properly. It might be on the download speed. So will there be notes available from this?
Yes. When everybody who's watched this, you'll get the PowerPoint notes as a PDF, and you'll get the video file afterwards. I'll send it to you as soon as it's available, which will be in about 3 weeks' time.
That's it. Let me just scroll up, and blah blah blah. Beatrice asks, as soon as I turn on my feelings, I freak out and always feel like I want to vomit. I'm so extremely horrified. Do I dare try my feelings alone, or should I seek professional help? In Sweden, it's hard to get any help. Well,
if you want me to take what you are saying quite literally, then you're telling me that when you feel any feelings whatsoever, your desire is to vomit. Now, you know if that is quite literally true, or if you're exaggerating for effect. If it is quite literally true, then yes, you need to seek a professional. If you're exaggerating for effect, then yeah, you can work on your own. But I don't know you, so I can't actually answer that question for you. I would say it's a very, very serious problem if you try to access your emotions and it quite literally makes you gag and want to throw up. Then I would say your CPTSD is at like an 8 or above out of 10. And absolutely, you should seek the help of a professional.
Pippi von Pepperson.
Hi, Pippi von Pepperson.
Yep. How do I do a subjective experience of feeling calm and relaxed when I'm not? No, that's just jumped to a second question. Blimey, we're going to have to, the scroll is a problem. How do I do a subjective experience of feeling calm and relaxed in the face of intimacy?
Exactly as it was described in the course. So the subjective experiencing is you go into what you would want to feel, what you would see, what you would hear, what you would feel, and the goal state of being there in the face of whatever the scenario is. So whether it's passing a training exam, passing a driving test, doing a sales thing, you need to vividly imagine being in that place and in that space doing that thing, but feeling this certain way. So it's not a different technique or a different process, context by context. It's all the same thing. We're going to take 2 more questions, folks, and then we're going to wrap this up.
Okay, so the next question on the way down is from Stella. How long should we self-hypnotize for? Half an hour-ish? How many times a day?
God, half an hour is a really, really long time. I would think set a timer on your phone, go for, to begin with, 2 minutes. When the timer goes off, see how you feel, maybe do another 2 minutes, and then build it up over time, but definitely not half an hour. I don't know what you do inside a half an hour with you.
You around a lot into half an hour.
Yeah, it's a lot. My mind would be drifting everywhere. 2 minutes, keep it focused, boom, in and out.
Anonymous21 asks, how do you encourage people to acknowledge emotion as well as encourage the development of resilience?
See my YouTube videos. That's pretty much all I do, is encourage resilience and self-discipline and being strong, and encourage the acknowledgement of emotion at the same time. I mean, that's what I do pretty much every time I turn on the camera. I'm saying you need to be compassionate, you need to acknowledge how you feel, you need to feel your feelings for yourself, and you need to be tough, you need to be resilient. That question kind of sounded like there was a false dichotomy, like resilience goes over here and acknowledging emotions goes over here. It's the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. Emotional intelligence is being resilient. Resilience is a form of emotion and expression of emotion. If you're truly emotionally literate, you will become more resilient quite naturally.
Okay, so we've got time for one
more. Let's do one more and then we'll...
One more. Anonymous79 asks, I must force myself to socialize but never enjoy it. I just want to isolate. Will hypnosis help me to find joy again?
I think at that level of CPTSD, I'd be looking to get a control of your emotional flashbacks first, work on your emotional literacy second, and then start doing self-hypnosis or hypnosis for enjoying emotional interactions and feeling safe and confident and optimistic about the outcome of those interactions as the third thing that you would do on that scale.
Okay, so that's it, guys. Thank you for all your questions and for joining us. And I hope you enjoyed it. I'll hand you back over to Richard now.
Thank you very much for your time and your attention. As Richard just said, thanks for your questions. I hope you enjoyed that. And the video will be available soon. Thank you.